The podcast you're about to listen to may contain objectionable language, adult and/or immature content, mentions of Jesus Christ, and unironic readings of holy Christian scriptures. If any of this is likely to offend you in a manner that you find less than enjoyable, maybe don't listen.
Hi, I'm Pastor Bob Schaefer.
And I'm Pastor Erick Damon. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to A Comedians with Pastors Talking Bible Short Take.
Short take. We do this every week.
We have. Can you believe it?
Yes.
You've lived it.
I believe it.
Can you believe it? Oh, listeners, you've gotten to have this great, amazing content every single week. We've been putting out this same irreverent, funny, insightful commentary on the Bible every single week this season, and we're still discussing the gospel text for the upcoming Sunday in the Revised Common Lectionary. We're still doing it with comedians.
And every other week we drop the initial banter with our featured comedians and instead dive right into Scripture with our resident comic theologians.
I'm Erick Williams.
And I'm Abby Evans. We
are not the pastors.
But you could be. Have you ever thought about it?
Briefly.
Really?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, wait. All right, off script now.
But
how briefly and how old were you?
When I was younger, there was some thought of being a UU minister.
Okay.
Wow.
But
I much more strongly considered cooking and chefing. I checked out culinary schools before ultimately going to college. But my biblical knowledge isn't good, but I was at church every week. It was just a UU church, which meant that I knew more about religions across the world than I did about the one practiced by most of the white people in my city.
Erick just about became a UU pastor, and I'm a yo-yo pastor. And that was gracious of you to laugh at that. So our individual backgrounds play a big role in how we hear and respond to literally everything, but especially big things like faith and the Bible. Erick and I are both pastors in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, a tradition that confesses the Bible as the inspired source and norm of our proclamation and teaching of Jesus Christ. It means that we try hard to remember that the Bible points us to Jesus and not the other way around.
And we bring on our guests, featured comics, and our resident comic theologians who don't necessarily hold to those same convictions. But I think not just the two of you, Erick and Abby, but everybody we've had on, even the guest or occasional guest that will push back theologically or belief-wise, have all been friendly, respectful, insightful, and most importantly, since you're the comics and not the pastors, funny. So thank you both for doing this often this season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are we talking about this week, Bob?
This week, we are turning to the Revised Common Lectionary reading for the 8th Sunday after Pentecost, which will be on Sunday, August 3rd. And our reading is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12. Here is the reading. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.
And unrelated to anything content-wise, my favorite verse in all this is, and he said to his soul, soul?
Yeah.
As one does.
I like how, and I will say to my soul, lowercase s, soul, capital S.
That's his soul's name.
Yeah.
This is not his dark materials where our souls manifest as animals and have their own names and we speak to them directly.
It's not Anthrocon?
It is not that either.
Have you ever seen like a little kid and they have like a stuffed dog and you're like, oh, what's your dog's name? And they just go dog. Like that's what it is.
What's your soul's name? Soul.
I had a roommate in college. We're getting off topic and we haven't, but I had a roommate in college and she had like the stuffed dog that she had from her childhood that she still slept with. And like no one questioned it. Then like one day, I think it was when we were moving out, I was just like, does your dog have a name? And she just goes, yeah, it's a dog. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even as an adult, you can be like, I have the capacity to give you a name, but no, you are a soul, so you will be soul.
Okay, so this is a dumb question here, but we're reading from Luke. So this is
There are no dumb questions, only dumb people.
exactly. So dumb person asking a neutral question. This is New Testament, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I do like just clarifying because this God sounds like a socialist.
Ooh. All right.
Little
Tell us
bit.
more about socialist God here.
He's like, oh, look at you. You're selfish. You're just creating goodness and wealth for yourself. You aren't sharing it with society, which is me. You need to share things unto my glory, like socialism.
Not to sound like Bill Maher, but like basically all of New Testament God is socialist.
You didn't sound nearly pretentious enough to be Bill Maher.
Can
You
we have
also-
it again?
We're gonna break the whole like respectful rule. You stupid Christians have no idea that your God is a socialist.
See, that still doesn't sound like Bill Maher because you wouldn't find that clip on a PragerU website.
Also, I want to fuck and culture. I don't want to do that. You guys challenged me to sound more like
We
Bill
are
Maher,
we are
and I
taking
rose
that
to
out
it.
of context and putting that as our next promo. Just that it'll get us listeners.
I was gonna say if it gets us views, then I don't care who the views are. But
I mean, so my boilerplate response to that is to call Jesus a socialist is anachronistic and inaccurate. To call Jesus a capitalist is anachronistic and would probably piss him off. That's the two concepts didn't exist. The economy of biblical times is so distant and removed from any post-industrial economies that to map our own economic understandings of it onto biblical times doesn't work. But definitely the greed of capitalism that states that we can create good out of harnessing human greed, which is essentially the promise of capitalism, that we see that humans are essentially greedy, selfish, and not out for anything other than their own interest, and we will harness that for good. And the biblical message is that is an evil will that cannot be harnessed for good.
Okay, so we've already established that I'm ignorant and stupid because I'm going to say something that I understand under many religious understandings, especially most denominations of Christianity, is contradictory. But I didn't say Jesus. I said God.
You did.
I did. I said God was a socialist, not because I know there's that
and
popular
they are
left-wing sentiment that like Jesus, but I also love your pre-Marxist philosophy where you're like, it can't be either. Economies weren't advanced enough.
I mean, not even I don't want to infantilize the economies of the time. They just were very different. I mean, the means of production were not industrial. They were you and your family in your house. And so typically,
Well, I mean, per
everyone
God,
owns,
he's technically the means of production.
He produced all the things that you, but I mean, the refining was done by you.
But Jesus is most decidedly anti-greed. I
Greed
mean,
is bad.
this parable is completely the anti-Gordon Gekko. Greed is not good. Greed is destructive.
Which means he would have issues with capitalism, but he would also have issues with communist Russia. Not going to be a Stalin stan.
His point here is one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. But he is also not like a minimalist, at least in this point. He is not saying one should not have possessions. He's not saying God doesn't want you to have enough. God doesn't want you to be comfortable, to be happy, to be well. But this idea of I have this super abundance that is so great that I've got to tear down the storehouses I already have so I can build bigger freaking storehouses, and then I can store all of the stuff that I've accumulated, and I'm going to keep on accumulating. There is something perverse in that Jesus is opposed to.
He would not like the stock market.
I suspect not.
Yeah, it seems to suggest almost like if you were to hoard resources beyond what you could spend in 100 lifetimes, Jesus is not a fan of that.
Completely hypothetically, he would be opposed to that.
He would be opposed to these hypothetical people that set aside enough resources that there's no way they or their children could use them.
Careful. You're going to confuse the Islamophobes when you say that Jesus would side with Zoran.
Jesus's point would be, you fabulously rich person, whoever you may hypothetically be, you're going to die, and when you die, what good will all that wealth do you, and whose will it be? And I suppose that for some, the idea that wealth is something that will become the inheritance of my children, and it will be part of a dynasty that matters to them. I think there are some people who might be very distressed to think about the fact that they will die, and all of that wealth will be.
And I think that's the joking about the he said to his soul. I think that line is in there specifically so that we understand this man was only thinking about himself, because the thinking about my lineage and my people is a very biblical thing. I mean, what will I leave behind? What is my legacy? Is the thing that was important in the Old Testament.
In some forms of Old Testament thinking, that is the only kind of immortality you have.
I mean, that is the promise from God. And so if he was thinking, I am setting this aside so that my lineage will carry on well, that is a very different thing than, and so I said to my soul, we sure are happy. And it really sets aside that this guy is not anything other than thinking of his own personal comfort.
Okay, so weird non sequitur here. Not quite a non sequitur, but like he is thinking about the divine, the holy, the soul, but it is very self-centered. It is not an interconnected. It is not a collectivist. It is not souls that the type of we are all connected thinking that is often associated with LSD or other hallucinogenics, which are often given as an atheist's or empirical explanation for a lot of historical, like, oh, I saw a ghost, or, oh, the Lord spoke to me, along with schizophrenia, which gets me to my point. How old do we know ergot poisoning to be?
I don't know ergot poisoning to be. What is ergot poisoning?
You know what
You're going to have to elucidate for us.
So... Do you know what? Okay.
So Eric got way too excited to know something nobody else knows.
Yes. Well, I'm surprised because you are all educated, intelligent people. So the crucible, the Salem witch trials, it is thought that it was a result of ergot poisoning. Ergot
Is that the wheat thing?
Yes.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
I still don't. Please continue.
So it's a mold that can it's a poison that develops on the wheat that can cause hallucinogenic visions. And it is thought, in specific reference to the Salem witch trials, that there was an ergot outbreak, and so that all these women being possessed by Satan, it was in fact the ergot causing them to have visions they were sick with this wheat poisoning.
Now, I am not above taking those sorts of explanations and putting them into biblical characters. It would be odd for Jesus to create a fictional person for a parable nature and then have them have ergot poisoning in his fictional parable to chastise the dangers of greed.
My thought was actually, well, this guy clearly hasn't had ergot poisoning, because if he did, he would be like, souls, all of us. I need to share this because we are all one, and in fact, I need to start a vegan diet. How can I found California?
All of his storehouses of grain are 100% ergot free. Jesus says to...
Well, actually, they're not. He tore down his barns.
What a dumbass move is that?
Yeah, they're sitting outside, and you don't just leave your grain and laying out. You build the other barn first, then tear down your barns. That's actually, Jesus is suggesting that's what happened.
This guy was not exactly a forward-thinking kind of a man. So Jesus starts all of this with, be on your guard against not just greed, but he says all kinds of greed. And I think that's worth paying attention to, that there may be different varieties of greed. And there are some that are easier for the four of us to dunk on. And then there are other kinds that are, maybe ones that we are more prone to. I say this as I am surrounded by the technology that I have bought for myself. And I can tell myself that, well, this is an investment in ministry, or it is an investment in a hobby that gives me life. And that is true. But also, my podcast with Erick consists in an abundance of possessions. And there is a reality in that we are surrounded by the storehouse of technology that I have built up for myself, and I will happily tear it down and build up bigger and better storehouses as I am able to. And so that is perhaps a greed that I need to be aware of.
I mean, to be fair, you are sharing.
I am. I let you play with my toys.
Well, and I have, in preaching this text in years past, just given the speculative question. Obviously, it's a fictional person Jesus made up to make a point. But how would Jesus respond if we changed the character so that his motivation wasn't so that he could sit back and relax with his abundant goods, but, wow, my fields are so abundant that I need to have X amount extra laborers. They all need to be fed well and taken care of. We're going to need larger barns in order to have the goods to be able to compensate them well for their work. And, then I now need more laborers to build the barn, so we're going to have to... And what if the whole motivation was just to care for the people that were helping this abundance become about? My speculation is that Jesus would have a very different response to that character, even though the abundance in the end becomes even more. But it's the point of the abundance
The
is
mission.
to share. Yeah.
Very, similar actions, very different mission statements and goals.
It's also, this is another one of those where Jesus gives kind of a weird response to somebody who has asked him a question. 'Cause look at what precedes all of this. A person comes from the crowd and says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." Now, I'm not reading that on the face of it as a greedy thing at all.
Jesus definitely seems to think it
Yeah,
was.
I mean, is that weird to anybody else? It might be a little bit weird that he thinks that Jesus is the person to do that. That he is seeing Jesus as primarily an authority figure who can just basically say, "Yeah, I'm going to decide this case for you." But it's not at least I don't think, an inherently greedy thing to say there's an inheritance and there's a way that it should be divided. Tell my brother to do it. I should have my share. What do you think of that? I don't have a clear answer to that either. I'm thinking out loud here.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that neither Jesus nor God like to be told what to do. I'm going to say that's a small part, but too there's the. I actually thought this line was a little bit contradictory because friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you, and I was like, well, don't you at a later point say that you are God himself, which would mean you are the creator, which means you in fact set yourself as the judge and arbitrator. But I think without being too autistic and semantic there, he's saying like, guys, work this out yourselves.
And
siblings, maybe, figure this out. Don't make me parent you.
I think you are right in saying, too, the sense of that this isn't what he's here to do. He may have that authority. That is not a wrong reading of who he is, to recognize that he would have the authority to make that decision definitively. But that's not why he's there. That's not why he's with this crowd of people. That's not why he is in Palestine at this time in history. He's got a mission, and this isn't it. And this might be a distraction from, not just for Jesus, but it might be a distraction for this man. Like this man might be so preoccupied with the inheritance that he's not getting his share of, that he's missing whatever is going on in that moment that Jesus wants him to catch.
I mean, I am in no way, shape, or form familiar with first century Jewish inheritance law.
I'm really disappointed in you.
I have always read this as he's asking Jesus to step outside the bounds of what would have been the normal inheritance division. To me, this is equivalent to the prodigal son saying, I want my share now. This is the inheritance that has already been inherited. And he says, I don't want to deal with my brother anymore. So tell him that we got to divide this up and go separate ways. And I am asking for my personal cut of something that was never meant to be personal. I am entirely open to have somebody with more expertise in that nature of this text to tell me I'm completely wrong, but that's been my reading of it.
2 weeks ago, we had Jesus being perfectly willing to enter into a sibling dispute. And now here we've got him and it's 2 weeks later on the pod, and it's 2 chapters later in Luke, and he's kind of saying, no, we're not going there.
And if my reading is correct, that gets back to what is the motivation here. If the motivation is actually fairness, it's one thing. If the motivation is I want to disrupt the family that I've been given just in order to have my own personal benefit from this, that's a different motivation. If you can hear my hesitancy in saying that, because I'm thinking out loud basically rather than anything that was studied, my hesitancy there is that line of thought can force people to stay locked into families that are dysfunctional and toxic. If you're thinking Jesus meant for you to stay there, but maybe there is something to that. The relationships that we have that Jesus has put into our lives should have at least some precedent of standing within our own personal being. We're not just individuals. We are members of communities.
Here's another thing that I noticed that I think might be an important point that is easy to overlook. Did you notice how this man in the parable became wealthy? I'm going to just pause while everybody turns.
He's a rich man. He's got these fields.
And the land that he had produced abundantly. And I think that is important, that he had good land, and the land itself produced. And I think that is indicative of that this is God's blessing. This isn't that he is a self-made man. He is a person whose land, as a blessing from God, has just produced. And sure, he worked the land. Of course he did. But it's also something that the blessings came to him in a way that were not linearly correlated with his effort, that God's goodness is present here. And so his greed is, I think, also a presumptiveness, that he is looking at the blessings that God has given him and seeing them as things that are the fruits of his own labor, and the things that are specifically for him to enjoy himself. Not that anybody does that.
I mean, well, and I think I am prepared to leave it on that note, with the caution that as you end up diving into in these later parts of the season after Pentecost, where there seems to be less good news and more teaching just for how to live now. And maybe that's not as bad as it is part of our tradition to push back against the ethical teachings and want it always to be good news because of the efficacy of when we hear that we are beloved. There's an efficacy that helps us live out the ethics better, but maybe every now and then just say that Jesus just said this is a good way to live is not an entirely bad sermon.
And hey, if you didn't already know it, now you know where eat, drink, and be merry comes from. And when you think about how people actually use that expression in regular life, they have no awareness that they are quoting a guy in a parable who's actually the bad guy, like this Gordon Gekko who is about to die, and he's
This is the born in the USA of scripture quotes.
Yeah.
which is paraphrasing Ecclesiastes, which is not eat, drink, and be merry, but the only purpose in life is to eat, drink, and enjoy yourself in your toil, which eat, drink, and be merry is hedonistic. Eat, drink, and actually enjoy the work you do is the actual one that is lifted up as a solid model in the Bible.
Be merry and enjoy the process are two different things, arguably.
that is like the difference between Locke with life, liberty, and property versus the Declaration of Independence, turning that into life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. We're good at paraphrasing old things. All right.
We are. That's why my confirmation kids are always paraphrasing me.
Well, as we look ahead, this is coming out still well before the September 6th show that you're opening for Zach Funk, who is another guest we've had on the show, another friend of the show. So do look to go out to the recording of his new album at September 6th at Mr. Smalls. Anything coming up in the next few weeks, or where should they find you at?
August 16th, come to Needle and Bean in Mount Lebanon. We've got another show with Zach Funk again, Kaylee Dumas, and Jeff Conkle. So,
And don't you have something going on at Mr. Smalls?
Oh yeah, I was gonna save that for later. But October 3rd, come to the Roast of Twilight at Mr. Smalls Funhouse. We did the roast of Taylor Swift, and now we're doing the roast of Twilight. So,
And follow me at Comical Edubs on Instagram.
and as always, It's Abby E on Instagram.
And you can find us at CPTB Pod, at CPTB POD, which is harder to say than you think it is. Hey, thanks out there to everybody who is still listening. If you were offended, we're sorry.
All right, I'll be sorry this week.
You will?
Yeah.
Show me your sorry face.
On the podcast,
Here,
I show. All right, here.
Show me your sorry face.
All right.
So you're still here. Share this thing with all of the people, with your family, your friends, your pastors, anyone you think will like it.
Inflict it upon your enemies. It's good vengeance.
We will be back next week with some featured comics that we get to know and see how they approach the gospel text.
Until then, may the Holy Spirit do a thing in your life.